I don't think of myself as much of a playboy, but there was a time when I was younger, in the mid-'80s, when I took 2 different girls to the Caribbean in 2 successive years. I first met Sue at the group house I was living in, not a half a mile from work, when she came over to visit a housemate of mine who was a friend of hers. After we'd been dating for a while, Sue expressed interest in a romantic getaway. Now, Sue had grown up in a middle-class neighborhood in New Jersey, and she showed me a brochure. The brochure was of cabins in the Poconos. These were honeymoon cabins, you know, the kind with heart-shaped beds. I carefully hid my disgust at this suggestion and made a counter-proposal. The U.S. Virgin Islands next spring. A colleague of mine was working there, and he told me how great it was. It was mid-March 1985 when we landed on St. Thomas and took a taxi up to our bed and breakfast high on the hill overlooking the town. We bought a bottle of that good Caribbean rum and clinked our glasses together as we watched the cruise ships go in and out of the harbor. Maybe one of yours? The next day, we took a water taxi over to the far less developed island of St. John to the east and made our way to our eventual destination, which was the campground at Cinnamon Bay. When we got there, our honeymoon cabin was a canvas tent erected on a wooden platform, and our heart-shaped bed was 2 wire-framed bunks having old mattresses on tired springs. If Sue felt disgust at this, she carefully hid her feelings from me. But in order to create some kind of sleeping arrangement that you might expect on a romantic vacation, we slid the 2 bunks together. That night I woke up bathed in sweat. No, this was not due to some passionate exertion, nor was it the onset of some tropical fever. It took me a while to figure it out, but I finally realized the mattresses were covered in plastic and wouldn't breathe. I made a mental note to bring a tent and sleeping bag next time. But we weren't there to sleep anyways. Mere feet from our tent was the glistening white sands of the beach. Sue and I donned our snorkel gear and waded out in the water and swam over to the nearby coral reef. Fish of a fantastic variety of colors and patterns swam hither and thither in front of a fantastic forest of staghorn coral. Every once in a while, a barracuda would swim slowly by, adding an air of menace to our underwater experience. One day we decided to follow the coral reef all the way around the rocky point that separated our bay from the next bay to the west. This took hours, and it was kind of disorienting because we had our heads under the water the whole time, or most of the time. Finally, we got over to the other bay, and as I waddled out of the water in my snorkel and mask and went up to the nearby sunbather and asked what beach we were on, I guess it's not surprising that she looked at me like I was the creature from the Black Lagoon. We didn't have a rental car, so the way to get around was by taxi. Now, these weren't checker cabs, they were pickup trucks with picnic benches in the bed. One of the drivers, Maria, advertised trips by flyer in the campground. These were snorkeling excursions to secluded bays. And she brought a picnic lunch for us that had fresh fish and fried conch, and of course, tropical rum drinks. At night, she took the taxi up to Centerline Road, which ran along the rugged central ridge of the island. We would sit in back and bounce around as she put it into her lowest granny gear, lurching up the hills. When we got out of the taxi and looked up, we were greeted by the splendor of a dark, star-filled sky. The Southern Cross hung over the southern horizon, just over the twinkling lights of the island of St. Croix. Well, as fun as this trip was, it was definitely long on outdoorsy experiences and short on luxury. And since it was my idea, it was a reflection in Sue's eyes of my suitability as a partner. Sue dumped me that fall, and I consoled myself I got a pair of new binoculars, and I was looking at the growing form of Halley's Comet as it approached the sun in its 75-year orbit. I went to the Christmas party at the health club I frequented, and there I met Melissa. And this health club was just up the hill from where I worked, not about the same distance as the group house, just in a different direction. Now, Melissa grew up in a Tony neighborhood in Northwest Washington. She good-naturedly accompanied me on my nighttime excursions to look at the comet through my binoculars, but I got the feeling she rather would have been at a cocktail party in Georgetown. The comet peaked the best views were in March 1986 in our area, and then it headed south, disappearing over the southern horizon as it kept growing larger. I got a great idea. Why not take Melissa back to the same place I'd been the year before with Sue to see the comet during its closest approach to the sun? It was like Groundhog Day all over again. The same bed and breakfast, the same campground, tents this time though, and the same snorkeling excursions. At night, Melissa and I would stand on the beach, admiring the comet now at its finest, through the binoculars. We were drinking quite a bit of rum and getting kind of giddy because there was phosphorescent plankton that made these glowing green dots. And the dots would wash up on the sand. We dubbed them land comets. Now, Maria, the taxi driver, at this time was scheduling trips up to the Centerline Road, of course, but they went up at midnight because that was the best time to see the comet, and the taxi was packed. And when we got out and looked at Comet Halley there in all its glory, it was the best I would see it in my lifetime. Well, Melissa, the repressed socialite, her patience was wearing thin. Our last night on the island, she put her foot down and insisted that we do something besides stay up all night and look at stars and comets. I relented and we went to a really nice restaurant at the west end of the island. But I couldn't stop talking about our astronomical experiences. And soon we were approached by a guy at the next table. He came over and said, he apologized and said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. And I'm up, would you mind terribly coming up to my hotel room and helping me with my new telescope, which I brought all the way from the States to see the comet?" Wow, I thought, Comet Halley again, this time through the eyepiece of an 8-inch telescope. I couldn't resist. Melissa fumed silently. Remember how I said trips are kind of like filters for relationships? Melissa dumped me that summer, setting her sights on a guy who more closely shared her view of how to have fun. But by then I was a member of the astronomy club, and I couldn't help but notice Laurel at one of the meetings. Laurel was not only the best-looking club member there, she had the best photo of Comet Halley taken by anyone in the club. I made the phone call for our first date from a phone at the health club, not 20 feet from where I had met Melissa, and a half mile from the group house where I'd met Sue. It was just one of those weird power centers, like where the Druids built Stonehenge. More importantly, would the third time be the charm? Well, it ended up taking us years, but after finding childcare for our 2 young children, Laurel and I finally got our Caribbean vacation to Aruba in 1998 to see the best spectacle of all, a total solar eclipse. Her picture of Comet Halley is framed and hangs on our dining room wall. Thank you very much.